Welcome to a wet Leicestershire, England at Donington Park, a track that needs no introduction, but I'll give you one anyway. 12 turns and famous for hosting all sorts of motorsports. It plays host to the penultimate round of the GT2 Championship here today. Qualifying just underway, and Mike Jones into the wall, already into Goddard's. This is going to be a very slippery affair. Hello, everybody. I'm Jesse Lee, joined by Austin Devonshire with Ash Bibby behind the cameras here today. Welcome home, Austin, and probably my favorite track in the world.
Yeah, you say welcome home. In real life, this track is literally about half an hour away from me, give or take. You said it's Leicestershire. I'm pretty sure it's Derbyshire, but I think it's on like a county border. It's slightly weird. But anyway, that's not important. As you say, Jesse, very wet qualifying here at Donington. And, I mean, it's England. We need a little bit of rain, right?
Yeah, it is very British, or as you would say, the weather has come off or come over very British here today. And the drivers I talked to prior to today's race were lamenting the fact that it was quite wet. The grip was at a minimum, and these GT2 cars do not have the sophisticated aerodynamics to sort of ignore or get over that. They're going to have to do some throttle modulation here, which is not something you typically do in a GT2 car. It kind of just goes by itself. It's set it and forget it, Scalextric style. But you're definitely going to have to be a little bit more ginger on that gas and brake pedal today.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to separate the men from the boys, as they say, isn't it, really? It's, you can't, I mean, these GT2s are supposed to be kind of like a more amateur class of GT3s, right? They're supposed to sort of be more for, like, kind of like the newer drivers. At least that's the setup in real life. It doesn't mean these cars are that much slower. Obviously, we do know they've got less aerodynamics, but more power in a straight line. So, I mean, with more power, less grip, always a fun combination. Is Kevin Boss on the way down to the Melbourne Loop at the moment? Ted Edwards is sitting provisional pole with a 131.7. Graham Lilith about almost half a second behind. But as I say that, Jackson coming in with a 0.173 behind Ted Edwards, but Ted Edwards still sitting in that provisional pole position.
Yeah, it's going to completely change here as the track gets running a little bit more. It was wet in practice. The track conditions improved. The speeds came up and the lap times, of course, went down. We expect something similar here in this quali session. You'll notice the weather widget in the top right-hand corner of the screen indicates that it will sort of stop raining in about anywhere between 10 to 30 minutes from now. But, of course, this qualifying session will end prior to that occurring. So we saw it in practice. The weather sort of improved, and even if the weather didn't improve, the track certainly did improve with so many cars here, 23 plus cars late in the season. You love to see that. Two different classes. It's going to do something to this surface. It will never change, at least in my mind, it will never change from wet to anything else, but that doesn't mean that there's not improvement in the adhesion.
Oh, of course, and as the session kind of progresses, you're going to start getting that dry line as well, but you can just about make one out as well on board now with Janot Kalmari in the 54. I believe this is the KTM. Yes, it is. It's the KTM, the number 54. A little bit of a slide going through the S's there, running slightly wide. I'm not sure if that was an invalidation. I don't think it was. There's no reason for it to not be. No reason for it to be. Sorry, they kept on the track. Late apex coming through the Melbourne Loop, on the run down to Goddard's. And yeah, no, you can just about see that dry line, as I was just talking about, just starting to form. And as the rain starts lessening up with more cars on track, that dry line is going to become more prominent. And as you say, Jesse, there's going to be more speed in the car as the session goes on.
I'm not going to betray who it was, but I heard a couple of drivers that were ultimately confident in today's race. And to contrast that, there was one that was the opposite in every single way. It was very woe is me. But for a couple of drivers, it was very much a, hey, let's see if we can't get out front and just drive away from the field, and we'll settle it at the end amongst ourselves. That's a plan that's been drawn up, and I'd be very curious to see if it comes to pass. If it does come to pass, then we'll talk about that a little bit more. Grim Lilith out in front with the 31.182. Boardman goes P2. They were just about the quickest car in the practice session, but they're a quarter of a second back from Grim right now. Daly in third. Raphael Huell has just gone P4, and they're a little bit more than 3/10 off the ultimate pace. Kevin Boss has set the pace in the silver class. That wheelie slow Audi is P1 by about a tenth. We'll call it 9/10 of a tenth. back to Peter Varga in second place in that class. You got to go all the way down to 15th for Critic to find third. Daly goes top of the heap, 30.947.
I think as the session goes on, Jesse, we're going to start seeing that pole position really change up in this particular session. I know a lot of the time we sort of just see like one or two make kind of provisional pole setters, maybe three if we're lucky, and that's quite an intense qualifying session. But I think given the changing conditions, as we see Jackson in P4 going off down there at Redgate, Kevin Boss about to cross the line as well. Where is that going to take them out to? That is going to put them up to P7, just 6/10 behind Daly. Again, that's another point I wanted to bring up. So not only are we going to see a change in position more so than we would normally. I mean, look at the gap between the silver pole sitter and the provisional pole sitter at the moment. The provisional overall. The gap's nearly half a second. I mean, it's good. I mean, these two classes are going to be all to fight for.
Yeah, well, Kevin Boss is good here. He's good here in the dry. He's good here in the wet. Remind you, the last time we called a race here, I think on a Friday, in fact, he was in the GTR, and the GTR was in a worse balance of performance state than it currently is, and he was able to dominate a race here in the GTR. And of course now that would be a less surprising feat with the abilities that car now possesses, but back then it was an absolute shock to see that wheelie slow GTR up there. He's done that a few times, in fact, admittedly, not to sell the man short. But today, he's in a more competitive car, more or less. Look at this, inside the top 10 and handing it out to the rest of his category. 6/10, like you say, and it is a full, what do we reckon there? Oh, yeah, that is a full 4/10 back to Varga in P2, who's also in the top 10 in the 508 Maserati.
That's it. And looking at it as well, there's next to nothing in it between Kelly, Boss, and Edwards. Even Raphael Huell, only just like less than a tenth of a second separating Huell and the likes of Edwards. What I'm more interested in right now, Jesse, is come the race. If these gaps don't really change, if Edwards and Boss are kind of on the same kind of pace, are we going to see a bit of an RCI derby? Obviously, but because Boss and Edwards obviously both do quite a lot for us here at RCI, and I do wonder if we're going to see a bit of a staff scrap going on.
Could well be. Ibiza Racer goes off in Goddard's, the final turn 12. That'll be a common thing that you see all day in the race. We expect the Melbourne hairpin to be a very lively place as well. 2-3 wide down through there almost always doesn't go. Differing opinions of how to take the hairpins ends up in incidents. Normally in Goddard's, though, it's cars exactly like what Racer just did there, where they just drive off the racing circuit. Of course, in quali, it's hard to tell if that's overdriving or if that's abandoning a lap. A lot of times these drivers will just throw the car into the gravel to stop it quicker and return to the pit lane, sometimes, of course, in frustration. Sven Kunis in the penultimate corner. Melbourne will head their way up to Goddard's. It's looking like an improvement for the 523. They're in sort of the meat part of the pack right now for silver. We'll see if they're able to do anything in their KTM. We've talked a little bit about Maserati and Audi today, but not really about KTM. But there you go, P3 lap for Sven Kunis, as that was more like it.
No, yeah, I'm looking at the top of the board as well, looking at the pointy end of the score sheet. Andy Boardman with a 130.9 provisional pole. Dominic Kamari crossing the line, and that would be P17. But Boardman with a 130.9, and John Daly 0.015 of a second behind, and then Lilith just a quarter of a second behind that, and Kelly only just trailing behind that too. So right now there's only less than 3/10 in it separating P1 and P4. This still could be anybody's.
Yeah, Donington has that weird ability. It's a fast racetrack, and it's easy to make a mistake that costs you several tenths of a second. But on the flip side of that coin, it also creates really close qualifying because of the nature of the circuit. A good lap versus a bad lap it's a lot of time. It's a huge delta, admittedly, as Daly goes back to the top of 30.775. So that improvement that we theorized, Austin, is absolutely happening. All these top runners, every single time they come through, they're improving.
No, that's just it. And That's the advantage of the dry line for me. It's definitely still a wet track. You can definitely see the spray and the rain is still coming down. But that's Florian going P18, crossing the line. Calmari in the pits, Rafael Hill in pits. So quite a small racetrack and a lot of cars out on track. But the one advantage in Donington, as you were saying before, Jesse, about the Melbourne Loop, people argue what's the best way to take it. But then you could say the same thing for the Craner curves. You could say the same thing for Coppets. There's so many kind of options to take those corners, which, a lot of racetracks, you have a sequence of corners and there's one line through. But I mean, take Coppets for example. Do you apex early and power out a bit late, or do you just kind of hold the speed and get the power down the main straight and apex Coppets late? But at the same time, that corner's also really slippery, especially here in the wet. So there's a lot of options presented to the drivers at this point in time, and it also means that despite it being a small track, it can open up opportunities for overtaking during the race as well. And given how close some of these cars are in qualifying, it's just going to be spicier during the race.
It always really ends up that way. This racetrack has what I call choke points. There's bits of the racetrack where you can end up about 3 wide. Redgate, you want to be in the best of times single file, but a lot of time you will go through their double file. By the time you get to Craner, though, you definitely want to be single file going through Old Hairpin, but then it widens out again through Starkey's and then all the way up to McLean's, and then you have a decision to make. Do I try to go around the outside of Coppice down the straight? I don't know about that. We've seen a lot of cars end up off the road. Bravest driver in the field, Bruno Teixeira in the 111 Porsche, the only Porsche in the field, and the Heritage Porsche as well, not even the standard model. And all credit to Teixeira. They have stuck with it this entire season. It's not been the most competitive car. Bruno knew that when he selected it. He selected it so that they could, be something different and see what was possible in that car. They've had some moments in this series. Today, though, not looking particularly good for the Porsche.
No, but again, that could just be a car track where we kind of a car track or even a weather kind of combination. A lot of it's so easy to get caught up in just practicing in the dry and not really account too much for the wet weather, especially if it's going to be unpredictable, like the changing conditions that we're seeing at the moment. Hat Critic coming down to Goddard's as well. Currently P14 in silver class, P14th overall, but 3rd in their class. So chasing down the likes of Varga and Boss. What's it going to come out at? They're coming down the Goddard's now, powering out of the final corner, about to cross the line, and it moves them up into P13 overall, but still P3 in their class. So no overall change there. Daly and Bodman still only 0.012 seconds separating the two. Miguel Martin's on the run down to Melbourne Loop now. Can they improve?
We'll see about that. The 62 a little bit out of place from where we would expect Miguel Martins to be. We would imagine Miguel would be somewhere closer to the top 10, as they typically are fighting for a top 10 spot, but that's likely because so many cars are improving every single lap as the track condition is giving way to a little bit more grip, potentially a little bit more heat in the tire. Miguel does improve for DCC Motorsport, up 1 spot into 14, a 32.212, a session best for the 62.
And that's always a good thing. So coming across the line, Richard Rithold, no change in position there, still holding on to P13. R. Kelly coming up into provisional pole there, a quarter of a second behind Daly and Boardman. So another provisional pole sitter there, Jesse. So as we said, you're going to expect to see that position change around a lot, but there's only 10 seconds after qualifying, so there's only really this lap, maybe next lap for who's crossing the line now, the 508, maybe not, just about. The 508 might get another lap, but then that is going to be it. That's checkered when people start coming across the line now.
Mike Jones might have been on a decent lap right there, but went exceedingly wide. I just don't know if the car refused to turn in or something happened, but they've lost a lot of that time. Will there be an improvement at all for Mike Jones? And there will be, but it will not move them up a spot, and that's unfortunate. Several cars abandoning their laps, including the Greased Weasel machine with Andy Boardman behind the wheel. Robbie Kelly, your provisional pole sitter, is also in the pit lane. Jordan Daly still out there on a valid lap. Kevin Boss has come through and set the 5th quickest lap of all. An absolutely booming shot here at the end of quali for that driver for silver. That could have huge championship implications in this race. We ride with board the Team Monkey Racing 508 with Peter Varga, who's got a little bit of work to do as they come down Starkey Straight and into the S's. Looks like a chicane to me, but hey, I'm not British. And then down into the hairpin, the first of two consecutive hairpins. Do not get it confused with Akina. There's 7 on that. There's only 2 here today. Austin, did you even get that reference?
I did get the reference. I was also just kind of distracted when you got the S's. It depends on the layout as well, because there's one layout that we're using now which has Melbourne and Goddard, which it's a beautiful racetrack until you get to those final 2 corners, and then the floor's just ruined. But then there's another layout where the chicane goes the other way. It's pretty much an identical geometry.
Oh my goodness!
That's
Miguel
huge.
Martins with a huge off.
No, that was
oh
huge.
My goodness. I don't know if that was purposeful or accidental, just sliding off into the grass. Either way, it was a huge crash. The car comes off of the ground, and they have returned to the garage. Just the one car left out on the track. You were explaining, Austin.
Yeah, I was, because there's different lines of the track where that chicane has the same geometry, but in this variation goes towards Melbourne and Goddard, but in the other variation goes straight onto the start-finish straight. So, depending on which way you look at it, it's a literal S.
Yeah, that's very true. Talking about the short versus the long layout, the short layout, I was very fond of as a, yep, I was very fond of as a youngin, racing British touring cars on the original PlayStation. Robbie Kelly, your pole sitter here today, a 30.530 in the wet conditions, good enough to take that honor from Jordan Daly, who will sit P2. Kelly has the quickest middle sector. Daly has the quickest third sector of all. Boardman and Ted Edwards in the second row, and behind them Kevin Boss went up to P5, and it's no small wonder. Quickest first sector of all for your silver leader there. Extra points for him in that championship fight. Plate, Lilith, Squirter, Jackson, not Johnson, and Huel, the top 10, and right behind them Peter Varga, P2 in the silver class, and Critic does take third in silver.
The rain really does mix up the grid just a little bit. I mean, Kevin Boss coming in with that fastest first sector. The thing that we said about kind of the track getting faster over the course of the session, yes, that's true, but you have to be able to make the most of that and capitalize on that as well, and that's an entirely different board game.
Well, speaking of an entirely different ball game, this may be the shakeup of the season, and this late to the end, it can only be detrimental for those currently in control. Let's take a look at the championship standings. Going to start off with silver. For some reason, we do this every Friday. Peter Varga. We don't know why, by the way. That's the joke for broadcast. We don't know why. Normally it goes pro and then silver. For this championship, in this champ only, it goes silver and then pro. Not a problem. It's just funny that we can't figure out why it does it this way. Nevertheless, silver championship standings have Peter Varga in front, 174 marks in front of Kevin Boss, who has more than 161 now by virtue of the pole. That is a tight championship race. He really slaps Mike Jones in third place, tied with Fabian Hundehage in third, both of those with 150 apiece. Callum Kerrigan rounds out your top 5 on 131. Gore Fox in 6th place. Critic, Teixeira, Browers, and Vilas Mas are the rest of your top 10 drivers. All of those still very close to each other late in the season. Outside the top 10, Partez with 92 points. Ibiza Racer has 86. Keith Whittle on 81. Sven Kunis has 48. Stevenson has 38. And Nudula has 34. Everyone else has retired from the championship. Moving on to pro, Christoph Estrepa has 195 points, not here today. And that may or may not open the door for some of the other drivers with the drop round and all. We'll have to pay close attention to that. But right behind them, Grim Lilith and everybody else is here. Grim has 160 points. Andy Boardman has 147. Ted Edwards just off the podium at 132. Daly has 130. Aaron Jackson in 6th with 128. Rybecki, 125. Huel, 122. Miguel Martins has 119. Tigris on 98 rounds out the top 10. Richard Whittle, the other Whittle, with 93 and 11th. Denak Kalmari on 90. Robbie Kelly, your pole sitter, has a little bit more than 84 points now and has had a huge confidence boost. Imo Plata, excuse me, with 81 points. Parker Olson on 69. Norris has 67. Martin Lawrence on 58. And as you guessed, everyone else has retired from the championship. Austin, it's really close. It's about as close as we've seen it in any championship in recent in recent history here on the weekly standings. And that's very interesting because you get this late, and normally drivers are sort of resigned to their fate. Okay, I'm racing for fourth, or I'm racing for a third place. They have the eye on the prize. The problem with this season, Austin, though, is that if you're in fifth or sixth, you're still within earshot of the championship leader, and you're thinking, I can have the lot.
That's it, and that's what's keeping this one interesting. I mean, it's we've still got so many cars in the championship as it is. I mean, I don't blame anyone for kind of sort of dropping as soon as the opportunity kind of disappears, especially if it was so close all season. But it is we're definitely sort of like at the stage where so we're definitely kind of at the stage where yeah, no, we've got a lot of cars that are still fighting for their championship, and at the same time, the only people that benefit really is us watching. I mean, I say this is the only people that benefit. I mean, they benefit too from having a chance at the championship, and everyone wants a taste of that. But it just means that we have even more kind of great racing to watch.
Yeah, and I'm not exaggerating either. How people in the broadcast profession, we like to exaggerate a little bit, but we're not really in this case. Peter Vargas, your championship leader by a handful of points. Yeah, I'd say about 10 over Kevin Boss. Now, I know the standings we showed you said it was more than that, but keep in mind, Boss now has additional bonus points for being on pole position here today. So by virtue of that, it's only about 10 points, and then it's only about 14 points or 15 points back to the next two cars, and it's only about 30 or 40 points back to the outside the top five. In fact, what does that mean? Peter Varga DNFs here today. We're knotted up at the top. There's 3 or 4 cars that are under a blanket, a proverbial blanket, of course, that could take this championship. Same thing, Christoph Estrepa may not be here today, and if they aren't here today, they're going to get no points. This will take precedent of their drop round. They finished 15th at Silverstone a few weeks ago, but that will start to count, and this will end up being their drop round, which it already is, so they will not advance off 195 points. And if Grim Lilith or Andy Boardman wins this race here today, they're going to get, I would say, probably a lot more than those 17 points. That would knot that up as well.
That's just it. I mean, Christoph Verstappen as well. I mean, that nice comfortable lead out in front at the moment, but how much of that lead is going to get eaten into today? It might all come down to the final race, as you say, as we're looking around a few of the liveries out on the grid at the moment. Obviously, now we've had custom livery support for a little bit now, and it's always really fun seeing what the drivers kind of come up with. Robert Kelly, I did see a couple of memes on that car. I saw the Spinala and the Brokerphone, sort of Vodafone kind of clone, the Wheelie Star Racing Team livery as well. Always fun to see. So, yeah, no, it really is all to fight for, Jesse.
Yeah, it really is, and it's a nervous grid, I think, for a lot of these drivers right now. They're worried about what they're going to do here on this first lap. I think it's sort of heightened a little bit. You're always worried about it in a situation like this in general, but now you're thinking, okay, you know what the points are. Most of the drivers, they either look at it during the week or they look at it before the race, and they don't really think about it while they're driving a whole lot. But in a situation like this where it is quite close, if you're sitting fourth or fifth on this grid, if you're Mike Jones in silver, you know what I mean, if you're Andy Boardman or Ted Edwards in the pro category, you're sitting here going, I am one accident away from having a shot to win this championship at Spa-Francorchamps in 1 week's time, which, by the way, is, of course, the finale of this series, Spa-Francorchamps in 1 week's time. We'll bring you both championship races when we get there, because, in my opinion, nothing these drivers are going to do today are going to settle this championship. It's too close to do that. The question remains, however, who will be the players when the checkered flag falls today?
That's just it. And there's a couple more things as well I want to mention, Jesse. Looking at the track conditions, it still says damp from qualifying. So I'm with clouds for the next half an hour, but of course the race goes beyond that. The race is an hour long. So, I mean, given the look at the sky and given the conditions, I do wonder if that opens the floodgates for the chance of rain later in the race and how that might influence the pit stop strategy of the cars. Obviously, there is a mandatory stop as well. The other thing that I wanted to mention, as you said earlier about choke points on this, you saw that you mentioned about the choke points on this track. Yeah, again, like as much as it encourages good racing, are we going to see any incidents? There's already been a huge sort of switch up in qualifying. Lilith currently second in the championship in the pro class, currently sat down in P7, and Kelly, who's, let's be real, has kind of come back from the bottom end of the pro class grid, taking pole today. So it's definitely this race has definitely already thrown a few kind of curveballs, and we haven't even started yet.
Yeah, Redgate's always an interesting proposition going down into it for the first time, and the problem with this race, the brilliant problem that this racetrack has is that if you're very mindful about Redgate, and most drivers are, you can make it through there 3 wide, and you'll get down to 2 wide and even single file through turn number 2, and you get down to Craner, and you think, okay, everything's going to be fine. We've sorted it out. You get to Old Hairpin, and somebody makes a mistake, they bobble, they go off into the grass, which is going to be incredibly problematic here with the wet grass situation, or they straight line turn 4, which is Old Hairpin, they end up back on bridge. That could be a problem. Or somebody turns it into Calamity Corner by going in there a little bit too hot, and then it all goes a bit wrong. The entire first couple laps here, you're never safe. And even if you make it through McLean's, even if you make it through Coppice and the S's, you go down to Melbourne, and it could be the same thing again. You're fighting for a position. The best opportunity is to make up spots on the start. Everybody is very keen on doing that, and then that is where it could all go wrong. I will say this, we have never had a clean start here at Donington Park on RCI TV.
I was about to say, this track is always mayhem in some way, shape, or form, and look at the cars pull off this track.
So many cars, too.
There is. This is all the recipes to be really fun for us to watch. Not so fun if you're sat in one of the cars.
I'll ask you this, Austin. You have experience here, and where would you want to be? And you can't say on the front row with Kelly and Daly. Where would you want to be if you didn't have the luxury of a front row? Where do you want to be? You want to be at the back of the field so you can see everything that's going on? Do you want to be as close to the front to have a better chance of survival? Do you want to be in the middle? Are you a thrill seeker? You like picking your way through the madness?
You see, yeah, starting from pit lane did cross my mind for just a moment, but no, just let everyone else make the mistakes ahead. But no, you just start kind of at the back and just kind of work your way through cautiously. But in an hour race, I mean, you can pick a few people off, but you'll only get so far, especially if you're as slow as I am. I'd want to start somewhere in the top 10. I'd say that'd be a nice place to be, because if someone does make a mistake, you want enough time to react to it. If you're so far out front and one of the leaders makes a mistake, you've got no time to react or kind of get yourself out of the way, and a really high chance of just being collected. So, I mean, if you're Boardman right now, Boardman might be in a really good position just to sort of get a good start and just sort of start trying to pull ahead a little bit. Ted Edwards as well, not so far behind. Daly, we're looking to capitalise on having a strong start.
Look at this aggressive weaving, trying to put heat in the tires.
I'm trying to discern, you'd have to be on dry tires, right? It's not a completely wet circuit, and it's not going to be wet for too long, but I'm trying to see, because you can tell, can't you, from the outside, because the dry tires have the Pirelli stickers on the sidewalls, and the wet tires don't. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Jesse, but
you're absolutely right. I can't quite tell from our television position what's on the sidewall. Those are definitely dries on the leader in silver. That's your pole sitter, Kevin Boss. I would imagine you're right. The track is damp, as you can see. There are standing water puddles. I saw many of the cars run through them on this lap. That's really good. This is kind of the point of a formation lap and a sighting lap, is to sort of let you get your eye in for what the surface is going to give you and what it's not going to give you. Sectors 1 through 2 had some very wet
Jesse,
parts.
half an hour.
Sector 3, not quite so much. And right you are, wet weather returning to us in about 30 minutes. For right now, it will be a mixed start as the entire field of 23 plus cars in 2 different categories make their way down the start-finish line here at Donington Park. It's a long old wait before they get released, but they just have. Kelly gets a decent enough start from Daly, and they're going to be side by side down into Red Gate for the first time, 2 by 2 as they come, and somehow the 69 of Boardman has gotten single file. A little bit of a wiggle there from Ted Edwards as they fight for grip. Everybody learning what the limit of adhesion is, and just about everybody has made their way through the crater curves and down to Old Hairpin without further incident. Kevin Boss is under attack, and it looks like Daly has been able to get out in front of Kelly for the lead, and Andy Boardman looking to capitalize this time up through Starkey's Bridge.
Yeah, no, Daly just found an opening and kind of ran with it. It's like Daly found an opening, just ran with it. Kelly actually quite respectful, leaving quite a lot of room, allowing Daly to slip by, and almost like Boardman slipped by too, but managed to kind of come in before the Old Hairpin to kind of cut that, to kind of close that door. Ted Edwards chasing down Boardman now on the gearbox of that Maserati. I did see a yellow flag a bit further down the field, but so far everything quite clean. Surprisingly clean, in fact, for a first lap here at Donington. Oh, 714, there's the yellow flag there.
714 off of the racetrack. That's going to be... That's not Dinek Kalmari. That's Dinek's going to get involved in here somehow. Oh my goodness, it's a huge slide. Almost exactly what I was describing. The wet grass is not going to help you, and you're going to slide off. But that wasn't the 714. That was Farga. And here is Teixeira, and it's Teixeira the one that gets involved with... Oh, that was the 14. I think that's Nadula.
714, isn't it?
That got involved. Oh, that's a very dangerous
714s.
Proposition. And that is Mike Jones's 714, but none of those incidents really involved him. And I don't know what car that was. Was that Racer? That was Racer in the Mercedes that was backwards and reversing back onto the racetrack after an incident they've had of their own. Hat Critic's going to get a little piece here, and yep, that's what's going to spin Ibiza Racer around to the inside of the race course, and somehow they ended up in an even more compromising position that required them to back out of the apex of that corner.
Yeah, it's not a great place to do it. Another race replay coming up from Ash at the moment, and yeah, that's Teixeira just kind of overshooting slightly and running into who was that? That was Florian Browers in the 41 KTM. So a little bit sloppy on the first lap here at Donington. We did say like we haven't had a clean first lap here. I think you said ever, right, Jesse? So
no,
we're kind of
never happened.
Kind of in keeping with the theme right now. Andy Boardman still in P2. Jordan Daly setting fastest lap of the race so far, despite the fact we've only just started. So expect that to change as time goes on. Track going from damp to greasy. So, and you see that dry line forming on the screen now. Is that Grim Lilith making a bit of a move there onto Kevin Boss? But Kevin Boss holding onto it. I mean, fairly slow start at the front, but I doubt it's going to stay that way for long.
Well, it was good heads-up driving by everybody. Daly, Kelly as well, Boardman, Edwards, and, Kevin Boss under attack there from Grim Lilith and Emma Plata, and they're all holding their own, but just from the top several drivers, that was very smart. Robbie Kelly sort of realized that he had probably been beaten a little bit and just fell back in line, and that's probably smart, because that keeps Boardman and Edwards and everybody behind them from stacking up into you, and that certainly helps your case. He's fallen 1.6 seconds behind, but it's very early days in the race. The 41 has just gone around, and that's Browers, and that looks like a typical Old Hairpin incident as they gather it back up and continue going. Kevin Boss, the leader in silver, getting hounded by Grim Lilith. I would have expected Grimm to be a little bit further up, and these two are absolutely going at it. Lilith to the outside. It's going to be a drag race to the hairpin. How much space will be afforded? Almost none. No quarter ass, none given here, and it will be the inside as Grimm's able to hang on there, and they should be able to complete this pass in Goddard's, and this is close racing between two different classes. This is frustrating for everybody. Oh, the leader's off. Kevin Boss, the leader in silver, has just got off the race course, and that will allow Grimm to take that position unabated, but a scary moment there for the Dutch driver.
A little bit, but still coming out. They've got miles of track between themselves and P2 in their class of Critic, and obviously Varga had the early incident as well, and that's their championship kind of contender, I guess. Varga, speaking of Varga, getting into a little bit of a scrap there, coming out of Goddard's, but currently sitting in P15, so still P3 overall in silver class, and that will yield them some points there. Donington Kalmari into Redgate, a little bit of contact there with one of the Mercedes, but both drivers coming out of it unscathed, just about.
Well, we know that we're going to have rain. The track started damp. It's now gone to greasy. I think every single car, at least the ones that we spied, ended up going with a dry Pirelli tire. Despite the rather wet nature of the racetrack, you can still see a little bit of the mist kicking up from the tires, and that's wreaking havoc on some of the field. Keith Whittle there off the track for Whittle's Whizzers, and that's going to be a common theme. It already has been a common theme, and I don't suspect it's going to change anytime soon. Some incidents in the middle and towards the back of the pack, and that's sort of what you get here. There's no such thing, and I will die on this hill, there's no such thing as a clean race here at Donington Park. It's just about survival and what's happened here to Ted Edwards. Ted Edwards has a history with Goddard's, and certainly looks like there was contact of some variety, and yes, the Ted Edwards curse continues, but he just about gets it stopped and rejoins the race. All he did was give up a spot to Grimm Lilith, who will say thank you very much.
Yeah, and to be fair, the thing that caught Ted Edwards out there from the looks of it is just that slight elevation rise as you enter Goddard's. The braking spot, it's actually kind of obscure, just behind like a little kind of crest going up to the top. So the entrance to Goddard's is kind of in a way completely, it's a blind corner at that point. And the elevation changes is what makes this difficult. Even in the dry, it could upset the balance of the car. I mean, look at it, like Kalmari over the curb at the old hairpin, and you see just how much the car did not like that. It just unsettled I mean, these GT2 cars aren't happy on the curbs anyway, but it just put the car into a bit of a slide, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. That elevation change can just kind of upset the car enough, and when you combine that with the greasy or damp track, that effect's kind of amplified. Aaron Jackson coming across the S's, and that's another point to mention, Jesse. Track limit violations. They're rife around here. It's so easy, especially at the S's, just to kind of go a little bit too wide, especially since that tyre wall has kind of been moved. It's so easy just to get just a little bit wrong, and you know, once is fine, twice is okay, 3 times you've got to be really cautious, and for the 4th time, that's a penalty.
Yep, that certainly is the case. Just reading some stuff from chat. Mike Jones was chiming in about he was commiserating how much he did not enjoy his car in the wet prior to the race starting. Kevin Boss, who's also in the race, mentioned that he likes the national layout better. And Austin, you chimed in on that one as well. And Mike Jones was saying that with the drop route, technically, they will eventually be leading by a few points, but we'll see how that shakes out, of course, after today. He actually said, give me 68 more minutes and I'll lose it, meaning the championship lead. And more contact here as Peter Varga has a little bit of an over-under move, and it's going to be ill-fated. He may have just stayed. He did, in fact, stay to the inside of him for Goddard's and be able to get that. That was on Dinak Kalmari in the KTM after all. Jordan Daly, quickest on the track thus far, enjoys a 2-second lead over Robbie Kelly. Boardman up into 3rd, or should I say staying in 3rd. Grimm Lilith up to 4th from outside of the top 5. Ted Edwards is now 5th. Emma Plata in 6th. Aaron Jackson in 7th place. And in 8th place, still your silver leader, Kevin Voss, down a few spots, but still has 3 cars in between him and the next nearest in his class. Remember Varga's early issues. That has allowed Critic to take P2 in the silver class.
again, this is what you were saying. This could shake things up a lot. Jordan Daly managing to pull a bit of a gap down. Ted Edwards setting fastest lap though. Literally 6 tenths behind Grim. Grim 3 tenths behind Boardman, and Boardman 2 seconds behind Kelly. So Kelly actually gaining ground on Boardman there, but losing out to Daly. I mean, you give Daly kind of the clear air to run with it. That is obviously helping them, and that also gives them a little bit of time and a little bit of kind of options to kind of gauge what to do strategy-wise as well when that rain starts rolling in just half an hour's time. Kevin Boss chasing down was that Jackson, and coming up to McLean's now. Again, this is such a hard part of the track to actually make to facilitate an overtake, just because it can be so narrow.
Yeah, you talk about track limits, and I don't want to gloss over that either, Austin, because that's a really big point. Some tracks, it's almost a non-issue with the way track limits works. I feel like in older circuits like Donington Park, luckily it's not been modified in a way that has ruined its allure that it had back in day. Of course, originally in the 30s, it was a completely different racetrack. You'd race through farm gates. But in the modern context, 77 and on, they really haven't modified it too much to change the personality, and I love that. It has that old world circuit feel, and because of that, though, it is very detrimental to the drivers. In a mixed condition like we have today as well, it's easy to go off. The S's is a great place to get a track limits warning. You can even get two if you cut the inside and the exit, or if you cut too much of the exit in general, you can get a 2X on your track limit warnings immediately, and you only get 3 of those before the 4th time asking, you get a penalty. So you can double up here almost immediately in the S's. That's not the only place you go off in the old hairpin. You can actually go wide in the old hairpin, and you can spin off. I think Les Stevenson actually in old hairpin got a track limits penalty for spinning off the racetrack and ending back up on the circuit before in dramatic fashion. So there's a lot of ways to get a penalty here. I don't think we've ever had a penalty-free race here, and of course no live stewards here today, so any penalty you see on the screen is being given out by the sim itself.
That is just it, and it's going to come down to, as you say, the track limit violations, all speeding in the pit lane. We have seen that. We saw that last week actually. We saw a few. I think Mike Jones even got caught out by that because I remember them saying at the chat that the board had been moved, and he wasn't the only one. There was quite a few kind of pit limit violations. As we've got another replay coming in, this is Richard Whittle coming into Goddard's, and what actually happened here? That's contact with what KTM is. I can't see the number there, but Whittle doing the right thing and kind of just waiting up and letting. The 523 that was, so yeah, Savinkunas, yeah, so not ideal, but doing the right thing, kind of just pulling off to the side and giving the position back. It has cost him a little bit of time, but as we say, that's always the best thing to do.
Yeah, Whittle did what you would expect an honorable driver to do, realized that he went in there and got him, and that was not fair, and stopped, and the only thing ultimately that they really lost was the time, and the pass has since been made again. Actually, no, that's just because both the Whittles are in a, they're turning Svinkunas into a Whittle sandwich is what's going on here. The car is very similarly but oppositely colored here. So Keith Whittle is in front, but Richard Whittle right behind. So those two, all 3 of those cars still together, and that does not make Svinkunas a very confident driver, but they're right back on it. And, well, all credit to Whittle for doing the honorable thing. And the thing that I think we all wish more real-life drivers did, and that's immediately go, oh, yep, I got you. Let's just get back in front. We'll try it again.
No, that is just it. And no, I mean, they're still hanging out there in like the pointy end of the pointy end of the Silver Fjord, only setting in P4, one step off the podium right now. Fair way back from P3, but not an impossibility. Grim Lilith making a move and tapping Andy Boardman. And
huge stack up behind them. They're going to be 3 wide down the pit straight, maybe even 4 wide. They get settled out, and that's going to allow Ted Edwards to get all the way up to a podium position. That's going to allow Emma Plata and Action Jackson through as well. And here comes Kevin Boss back into the fray as well. Boardman in there. What happened? Oh, yeah, Boardman's the one that got tapped, in fact. Yeah. We just saw that. Boardman gets tapped by Lilith. Boardman, the loser in that situation with Grimm as they go to the back of this group. And of course, that allows Kevin Boss to catch back up as well. And that's good for his hopes in the silver class. Big winner, though, Ted Edwards, right place at the right time in Goddard's.
That's just it, promoted up to P3, as you said, and it looked like the move was almost on for a moment, and I think it was just a little bit of an overshoot from Lilith into Goddard's that caused just a small tap, and it really was just a small tap, but just enough to cause a little bit of Kayhan. Kevin Boss chasing and actually joining the pack a little bit, and this is where we're going to start seeing a little bit of a train forming.
Ooh, off the racetrack, there's Boardman.
Jeff Boardman was a little bit rattled at that. I mean, there's a situation like that coming from
Here comes
G2.
Action Jackson as well.
It's so much going on all at the same time. It looks like no, is that Edwards that's just squeezed their way up to P2?
No, Ted Edwards is P3. Of course, they're in the lead of this train, and Robbie Kelly a little bit up the road. In fact, there is Robbie Kelly in the black and yellow effect Maserati in P2, but looking back from Ted Edwards, the Race Ventura Audi, and it shows you the magnitude of the sort of Constantina effect, I suppose. Imo Plata now the leader of the group. Ted Edwards has been able to pull away just a little bit, enough that he's no longer a factor in this, and Aaron Jackson, the man we call Action Jackson, and you'll see why here in a minute. He's going to have a look. He's had a couple of looks on Imo Plata, but nothing that has stuck. He thought about taking them, had certainly a better S's, but couldn't quite get it done into Melbourne, and didn't have a fight into Goddard's either. So now single file again, trying to set it up, trying to hope that Imo makes a little bit of a mistake, but nothing doing this time through Compass.
That's just it. And I mean, this is the thing. If you just kind of keep yourself kind of tucked in and close behind you, just kind of have to kind of wait for a mistake or kind of like a hero opportunity. You have to really kind of plan for one of like the 2 or 3 overtaking opportunities around this track. So big one's coming down here at Melbourne. You can dive to the inside and try and outbrake the car in front, but again, I'm just not quite able to make that happen. A driver I really want to commend right now is Kelly. I mean, again, can we just remind ourselves that Kelly's kind of come from, you know, in terms of points, kind of from towards the back of the field overall, but at the same time put the car in pole, had a really strong start. It was really only a small mistake really that let Daly by. Managed to hold off Andy Boardman going down into the old hairpin on lap 1 when Boardman had a really strong opportunity to actually facilitate that pass. But now Kelly's all Kelly's doing is there's no blistering lap time. They are losing time to Daly, but they're just racing their own race. They're just kind of keeping their own pace going, keeping it consistent, and ultimately they're still sat there in P2 overall, and it's working for them.
Yeah, right you are. They took the pole position, so that's extra bonus points, a shot in the arm as I called it pre-race today. But just to explain why this is such a momentous occasion for Robbie Kelly, their best finish was at the American round, round 2 of the championship. They finished 6th there. They have not finished inside the top 10 other than that one round. They finished 11th and 14th. They did not show for the Nordschleife round 1 week ago. So with that considered, that was incredible, and to us it took us by complete surprise. Not only did they have the pace in that Maserati to set on pole, that they're still in P2 and they're unchallenged right now, and this is the best thing for them. This could be a fantastic race for them in pro. All they have to do is maintain the gaps, something they've done quite well for the first 15 or so minutes of this race. And some of that, though, has to be because the group right behind Kelly are all over each other. Another look that lap by Jackson to the outside of Plata was unable to make that work as well. Had to fall back in line, but he's got a little bit bigger problem here as, something's happened. Oh, wait, no, Jackson's up to P4. He's done it. He's got by Plata. I was confused there for a moment, but no, Aaron Jackson has made the move, but I didn't see how he did it.
Yeah, no, I didn't see either. I looked away from the screen for just a moment, and Jackson managing to make it around, and that's huge. That's huge because as much as Kelly is just sort of doing their own thing. It's okay, it's Ted Edwards, sorry, it's Ted Edwards that they've overtaken. Again, Ted Edwards not being any slouch right now, actually, you know, kind of really kind of forcing the way into the top 3. But again, at the same time, Edwards, again, going side by side, almost into the S's. Not over yet at all. And Lilith, again, chasing down for another opportunity onto Boardman. Boardman recovered from a lot of the thing, but as I say that with Lilith going wide as well, losing time, almost losing the car. Gets it back on the track just before that little bump on the outside.
Off track.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point, Jesse. Especially if that's an advantage gained.
You can do it on the inside and the exit of the S's. That's the problem, is that you can get doubled up, and I don't think that's what happened there to Grimm, but it could be a situation where he gained an X for that maneuver right there. And it's so difficult. You get into the S's, there's aero wash, even on these cars a little bit. You get it wrong in these cars that don't have so much front downforce. You're almost on rails. It makes it easier to save the car when you get in a situation like that, but it also doesn't help you avoid that situation either. Ted Edwards gaining on Kelly for P2. The fight behind them. Jackson up to P4. Boardman in 5th. Plata down to 6th. Grimm working on Plata for that position. And Kevin Boss just sort of minding his own right behind him. And by the way, I will say this to Kevin Boss and anyone that's been on this Easter egg hunt all season. He's hidden something on that car. And Ash, don't show it, but I just want to make it very clear. I have now seen it, and you are a sick, sick human being, Kevin Boss. Absolutely sick human being. I've seen it. You should be ashamed of yourself. Moving on. Daly leading the race, has the quickest lap. Rain in 10 minutes. It'll start off light. It will turn into a medium rain, not a medium light rain, as Les Stevenson would have you believe. I do not believe his propaganda. It will be a medium rain, full stop, in 30 minutes from now. But we expect rain, light rain, in the next 10. And what will that do to the pit strategy and cycle here today, Austin?
Well, Texera's already taken a bit of an undercut coming out of the pit lane now. Yeah, no, is it too early? There's still 20 minutes of the pit, well, 18 or 19 minutes of the pit window open. So, I mean, let's take a look. Can we see what's on the sidewall of that car? Can't. It's either it's moving so quickly that the sidewall's blurred, or that might be wet weather. We'll have to take a look at the pace of that car, but at the same time, that might also have to stop a second time as well. Track condition currently is actually fast, according to the in-game condition calculator, display indicator or meter. According to that, the track is completely bone dry right now, and actually in a fairly good condition. So we'll have to see how quickly that changes over the course of the next 10 minutes.
Yeah, I'm curious about that too, Austin, because like the strategy has to be right now, go until you cannot physically stand it anymore and then come into the pit lane. Coming in too early, I don't think is the right strategy at all. Coming in too late can be detrimental to not only your lap time, but your race in general. You could stack it off the course somewhere, but I don't think you're going to see a land rush whenever it starts to rain. A lot of cars coming in. I don't think you're going to see that. I think you're going to see several laps before they consider coming in, because if it's going to be very light rain, which is what this appears to be initially, and it's going to progress into the medium rain, you might be able to get away with it a little bit longer than you think you can. And it's all about driver feel. What are they feeling in the car? Some are going to get this right, some are going to get this wrong. There's going to be some gamblers as well. Maybe if you're at the back of this top 10 pack that we see that have put on all this racing for us today, you may consider, if you're at the back of this pack, coming in early trying to get the jump on them. But then again, double-edged sword, you start to wear those wet weather Pirellis out on a dry racetrack, or one that's not completely wet, then you're going to put yourself in an issue late in the race where you have absolutely no tread, and it's almost like you're back on slicks.
That's just it, and that's a really good point. As you say, if you switch over prematurely, if you get on the wet tyres on a dry circuit, you know, that compound of rubber is really soft. It's going to wear away very, very quickly, and that could, even if it pays off, even if it starts raining 1, maybe 2 laps after you predict it to, you know, at that point in time, the damage is kind of done to those tyres, and that might cause enough of a drop-off as we see Carl Marby coming up to McLean's and making a move onto Miguel Martin's, making it stick. Actually, no, I say that, but still, Martin's still side by side going up into Coppice, and we said before, this corner does have a couple of lines. This is a potential overtaking opportunity if both cars kind of play ball. It looks like they have, but Carl Marby settling down to the back, settling down behind Martin's again. And we'll have to try and find another opportunity.
This track's just absolutely brilliant. It does stuff like that. Those moves, it took 3 or 4 corners to make that happen, and then they all were set to naught, and they're going to have to do it again. A little bit of frustration for Denak there for sure. Going wide, though, is Miguel Martins. This might be done and dusted for Denak, and it is Kalmari from the TIG Gang group, the 54 KTM, getting it done. Not done yet, though, says Miguel Martins. Goes to the outside of Goddard's and maybe cuts it off, V's off the corner a little bit to get a run down the pit straight, and he will. He's going to fan out towards pit wall. They're going to be side by side again into red gate. The inside should prevail here, but not always. Sometimes in a drier track like it is, you can get a run on the outside. Denak comes over to fan him over to that side, but they're still side by side, heading down into the Craner curves and on their way down into the old hairpin. Kalmari to the inside should prevail, but will there be another crossover move? He's thinking about doing it. Covering off is Kalmari. Here comes Martin. Martin's looking up the inside now, and he won't be able to do it. And now, finally, their line astern, and that move right there cements your position. Slamming the door is Kalmari. Martins has to back off in lieu of running into the back of the 54 KTM. That took an entire lap for that move to stick, and that's why I love this racetrack.
That's just it, and don't count out just yet. This is still a bit of a power section coming up now. A lot of straight lines between now and actually finishing the lap, and we know how fast that Mercedes is in a straight line. So can Martins do anything to sort of outbrake or pull that gap a little bit closer coming out of Melbourne, get the better exit? I mean, that's Kalmari missing the Apex Italia, which will not be helping their case, which is actually kind of in a way opened the door for Martins. We saw how much gap they pulled on the final lap coming down the start-finish straight. Can they do it again? All they need is a good exit here. It looks like they got closer to the Apex, but it looks like Kalmari might have just done enough to keep that KTM ahead of that AMG. Looking at the order as well, Ted Edwards still half a second behind Kelly. Actually, I say it's still half a second. That's actually a gap that's actually been pulled up a little bit. Jackson 1.8 seconds behind Bourne, 1.6 seconds behind Jackson. Half a second behind Bourne, so still all to play for at the pointy end of the field. Peter Varga trying to make a move on Critic. And coming up into McLean's. Again, we've seen it before. It's possible to overtake here. Takes the grass! Takes the grass and off in the gravel at McLean's, keeps it out of the barrier, but again, you see just how sensitive these cars are on the curb and to that aero balance change.
That was a very scary moment. I thought Varga was going to go right into the back of Critic there and was able to, I think, did that on purpose, jerked the car to the left to keep from hitting the back of Critic, and has lost all of that time. That was the battle for P2 in the silver class, but that's gone for the time being, as Peter Varga for Team Monkey Racing is going to have to regroup after that one. And here we go again. Sven Kunis with Richard Whittle here fighting over 16th position. Looks like Whittle's going to have the inside of the S's, and that should be, looks like, job done there. Credit to Ted Edwards. Ted Edwards had a 2.7 second deficit to Robbie Kelly, and in fact has just made the pass on Robbie Kelly for P2. Now, was that because Kelly made a little bit of a mistake, or because Edwards just drove by him? But they were half a second apart in the previous timing and scoring loop, and that's not really what I would consider striking distance. And then all of a sudden, as they hit sector loop 2, Ted Edwards was in P2, if maybe a little bit too late for a replay now, but something happened there, I would imagine, to Kelly, because Edwards was coming, but he wasn't quite fully there. I imagine Kelly had a bobble or maybe just a bad turn in general, and Ted Edwards swooped in and has now taken P2 for Race Ventura.
And we're getting the race replay now, it seems, and Ash doing great on the cameras. And yeah, I was going to say, it's like Ash doing great on the cameras tonight, as always, but yes, this is still ahead though, so that's yeah, no. So that's all we've got in terms of replays. So it's a mysterious case of how Ted Edwards has made that move, but at the same time, Ted's been on a charge, right? We got to give Ted some credit here. Oh, and it's like a bit of a distraction for the train of thought. That's been going Martins with a drive-through penalty. That will be track limit. Actually, no, to stock off 30 for speeding in pit lane. It's a drive-through for track limits. So obviously no live streaming tonight, but no, Ted Edwards has just kind of got the head down and just kind of cut through the field, saw the opportunity with Lilith and Bodman having a bit of a coming together, and Edwards has just kind of gone for it since there, and the rain has also just started as well. So a lot of cars still out there on dry tyres, and that is going to cause an effect. Track has just gone from optimum briefly to fast, and that's going to get wet very, very quickly, Jesse.
Yeah, that's going to frustrate the drivers as well. They were that close to a really good raceable racetrack, one that they're very familiar with, and now here comes the rains 30 minutes after the race has started, almost on the dot. You can't say that British weather is not very poignant, because it is here at the halfway point, and the track immediately down to greasy, and the waiting game begins. When do you feel the grip fall out from under you? I don't think you're going to see a lot of cars down pit lane initially. We know that Bruno Teixeira in the 111 Porsche, they were in quite early indeed, and I'm hazarding the guess that that car is still out there on the dry Pirelli P0 tires. Jordan Daly is in, completely obliterating my theory. Ted Edwards, Robbie Kelly is in, Aaron Action Jackson is in as well, Keith Whittle is in, and we saw the car that had the penalty, Miguel Martins, did serve that penalty. That was for track limits. Not allowed to make your stop while you do that, so they will have to make an additional trip down pit lane. I'm surprised, Austin, that so many of the leaders are in early like this.
Oh, that's I don't know. It just comes down to how much of a handful that those tires are, in these conditions. It might just be an idea to kind of get the undercut sorted as well. I mean, Jordan Daly already deciding to come in, as you said. Kelly coming in, Edwards coming in, Jackson coming in. So it might just be that not only are they trying to sort of just get the undercut, not just try to get the right tires of the car. They looks like they could be going for the undercut as well, and that might, we've seen it before where that has been an advantage. Track is still greasy, so the dry tires still have some effectiveness right now, but for how long? Yeah. But for how long is? At what point do they fall off, Jesse? That's the question.
That's what was so surprising about all those cars coming in. Richard Whittle in this time with Dinek Kalmari. But that's what was so surprising with all those cars coming in. The general theory is you go until the grip isn't there, and that usually takes a lap or two once the rain starts. It's not like an on and off switch. And everybody now going into the pit lane, I don't know if there's a different characteristic that I don't fully understand with the GT2 versus a GT4 and a GT3, but generally speaking, you would go many, many laps until there was a considerable fall off, but that's not what happened. This is more Le Mans style, where it's raining, get me into pit lane, put me on the wet weather tire, and that's so unusual for ACC. We don't see this, but everybody has ended up in the pit lane, and that could just be the reason why that might be is it was about pit stop time anyway. They want to pit bang on halfway, which is a generally acceptable racing strategy as well. So why not? Don't modify it based on the weather. Come in at halfway, put the wet weather tires on, and hope in a lap or two that it is good enough, because right now, even on a damp racetrack, they're still going to be somewhat warm, the wet weather tire, but it's not like running on a dry track as well. But Kevin Boss, the leader currently overall, as everybody else dives in the pit lane. Rafael Huel, Peter Vargas, Finn Kunis, Miguel Martins pits again. Browers is in. Mike Jones has not pitted. Nadula and Teixeira in the pit lane as well. So only a handful have yet to complete their stop, as nearly everybody has decided to not deviate from the standard dry strategy of coming in at halfway.
That's just it. So just having to deal with those tires. The track is now officially damp as well. With 10 minutes, the rain set to increase throughout the race up until this point. Now, for the next half hour, that rain is going to start increasing and coming down heavier. And I'm not entirely seeing it. There's a slight dry line, but it's nothing crazy right now. It all just depends on whether or not the rain starts to overpower. If the amount of rain coming down starts to kind of overpower the amount of water these cars can displace. So they're coming through the S's now, chasing down Kelly. So Kelly has kind of dropped another position provisionally, I think so, to Jackson. Jackson having made their way around. So Edwards and Daly still Yeah, Daly's still out in front. There's still 17 seconds or so separating Daly from Edwards. So Daly right now kind of has it kind of clear sailing, as Raphael Huell having the drive-through penalty as well. So that's starting to catch up to a few of the drivers.
Well, today the weather in Britain has played its part in a very wet practice, a very wet qualifying. Has led to a drier start to the race. We very briefly got to an optimum track, and then immediately the rains came again, and it's only going to get worse from here on out. In the next 10 minutes or so, we'll have increasing rain, and yes, folks, we will have a medium light rain at some point before transitioning to a full medium rain right before the end of this race. What will the strategy entail as everybody now has completed their stop? And I believe I saw a drive-through. I didn't quite catch the car, but it was Raphael Huell, in fact, who had the drive-through penalty. We have lost a car as well. We had 23. We now only have the 22 cars. But up at the front, Jordan Daly still leading by 13 seconds over Ted Edwards. Aaron Action Jackson has caught them for P2. Robbie Kelly in fourth place, right behind them as well. Matter of fact, everybody behind Ted Edwards, Jackson, Kelly, Lilith, Plata, all of those cars in a line, all fighting for a couple podium positions.
It's always great to see, and I mean, that's the cars are going to get more difficult to drive. So we've already had a lot of action so far through this race. We're only just about halfway through. Robbie Kelly holding off Grim Lilith. I mean, still holding on to one spot off the podium. Don't count them out. We've seen how many mistakes have been made, and especially now in terms of the drive-throughs coming through. All it takes is Jackson, Edwards, or even Daly to make the same kind of mistake, and that will relinquish that third step at the podium back to Kelly, or in fact Lilith, if Lilith can actually find her way around. And one thing I've known about Grim's very strong in the wet. I've raced with them a few times in the past, and in the wet it's always been a bit of at least my Achilles heel, but Lilith's always been strong in these situations. And I mean, that seems to be transferring over to this race too.
That's not the word I use, Austin, for that, but the word I use for Grim in any condition, but especially in the wet, is unsufferably good, is what he is. Racing for Speed Juice and Horseflow here today. Yeah, he's terrifying. He's frustrating to have to race against. Not because he's bad, but quite the opposite, because you almost stand no chance against him. Vince McMahon would say no chance in hell.
He's so patient. He's so patient that, like, you could, even if you're slower than, they'll just bide the time. They'll give you the space, but it's an uncomfortable amount of space. It makes you feel like you've got this kind of false sense of security. And at the end of the day, they don't need that gap. They'll just make you make a mistake due to their presence of just being there. That's Kelly making a move on Jackson. Jackson goes slightly wide into Goddard's there, and not able to really make anything of it. But at the same time, this is what I mean. At this point in time, this is where you kind of got Grim behind you. You know Grim's quick. You know that they don't have to put too much work in to keep up. But they'll just kind of hover there in the mirror, especially in a bright colour scheme like that. You know, it's a little bit more distracting. But yeah, no, it's just it's such good racecraft.
Yeah, I mean, you know, contact happens in all inevitabilities. It's part of racing. The cars have fenders for a reason here, but beyond that, Grim is a driver who understands his race car, and I don't know when they started making race car drivers actually intelligent, but whenever that occurred, he was at the forefront of that, and he certainly shows that week in and week out, and he's, like I said, he's very unsufferable in that way, where he will out-strategize you, he'll outsmart you, he's going to outrace you, and you've got to sort of figure out, how do I counter that? It's the same thing with any driver, really. How do I counter that? How do I keep them stunned? How do I keep them behind me? What do I do? What are they doing better than me that I can improve upon? Where am I better than them, so that I can sort of, you know, countermeasure what they're doing? But running wide is not going to help that for Robbie Kelly. Grim takes another little bit of a peek, but doesn't stuff it down in there. It was a little bit wide from Kelly. That allowed Grim to gather himself a little bit closer, and here's what he's going to do. He's going to late apex into Goddard's and potentially get a run down the pit straight. Nope, not quite able to do it there. A good corner for Kelly, and they end up line astern. Jackson has fallen off the back of Ted Edwards. That was less than a second. That gap was about a lap or so ago. Jackson now 1.8 off of the Race Ventura driver, but all of these, Jackson, Kelly, Lilith, all together now. Zemo Plata has fallen off the back of this group ever so slightly.
That's just it. And with that, Boardman as well, still 1.2 seconds behind Plata and under threat from Kevin Boss. That Audi, Kevin's flying today, Jesse. That's another car off on the grass. It looks like a KTM.
That was
Whittle, yeah, probably pulling off to the side to kind of let these guys through. Sometimes it's the best, sometimes it's the safest and most comfortable thing to do. But Kevin Boss really giving Boardman a hard time right now.
Yeah, by the way, I just want to touch on what Keith Whittle did there. He saw the entire leading group coming at them and did not a requirement in any way, but did a quite selfless thing there. Took his own car off the road to make sure that he telegraphed enough that I am not going to be involved in this. Go by me. I'll continue racing my own race, whatever you go through. And that was way more accommodating than I would ever be on the racetrack. But that was very nice and very selfless of Keith Whittle there to drive off the racetrack. He wasn't having an incident. He was literally just taking a siding to allow the group through.
I mean, yeah. I mean, Whittle has as much right to be on the racetrack as anybody else. They are still involved in this race, and yeah, no. Sometimes removing yourself from that from the racing service entirely. Yeah, okay. Hats off to. Absolutely hats off to. Andy Boardman still being chased down by Kevin Boss. Less than a second. There was 0.388 of a second. Boss is really hounding Boardman here, and let's be real, like Boardman is still up there in terms of the Pro Championship, and Boss is coming up from the from the class below in the Silver Am group. So yeah, but Kevin's really had this race kind of under control since the beginning. Varga's still in P2. Again, Varga, another driver you kind of have to commend. They've had a few incidents to sort of like at the start, and they've really worked their way through those incidents to land up back up in P2 in class. Still some ways behind Kevin, but you know, it's a testament to how good Varga has taken this race. As Boardman makes a mistake through the S, is going slightly wide, and that's going to give Kevin an opportunity to maybe try out braking down into Melbourne.
Medium rain here in less than 10 minutes time from now, so this racetrack is going to get it's already soaked, but it's going to get even more so. The speeds are going to come down, the sliding is going to increase, and that could throw a wrench into the finish here today. We will end under medium rain, and this we'll get to see do some of the rain masters start to matriculate up the field ever so slightly versus drivers that are a little bit less confident. Kevin Boss looking down to the inside of Boardman. Now, this is a scary sort of moment for Kevin Boss. He's got a few car lead on Varga, and I think that gap is quite commanding for Kevin Boss right now. The problem is that if he gets sideways or gets in trouble here with Boardman, that could catch them all back up in an instant. So Boss electing to race Andy Boardman here. He's not put himself into danger, but you've got to be very careful about how you race this driver, because Boardman is, after all, a pro driver. He's not going to care too much about the silver driver's plight, and that is going to cause a little bit of friction between these two. Boss realizes, hey, I'm a little bit quicker. Boardman saying, yeah, but you're not getting by. We're racing for a literal position here, P7, despite the fact that it doesn't mean a whole lot for either of these drivers. This is the battle they found themselves in, and Austin, race car drivers gonna race car.
That is literally it. I mean, we've seen this situation time and time again in terms of yes, there's different classes of cars, but I mean, there's a little bit of pride racing for position, isn't there? And Boardman, no doubt, rattled from the earlier incidents. I mean, they were already P2 overall, chasing, not P2, so P3 overall, trying to find a way around Kelly. And probably one of the drivers, that could have helped the train catch up back to Dalia's. Boss sends it into Redgate. Absolutely sent it, but sent it a little too hard. I was scared. We were watching the onboard. Kevin Boss disappearing out of view. I didn't want to. I didn't want to call it they'd gone wide, but that was a big send, and maybe the not just it wasn't just sending the mail; it was sending the entire postman.
Yep, here he is. He's just going to get it a little bit too hot down into Redgate and off into the dirt. And honestly, if you're going to have an incident, a mistake like that, that's probably the best case scenario, is just to go off into the dirt with no harm or no foul, because all you've really done is damage the time back to the cars that matter behind you, and nothing really crazy there. You can actually reload and have another shot, another go at Andy Boardman. I saw that Grim Lilith and Plata were having a fight immediately in front, and here is that fight. They also got close to each other into Redgate. No move made by Plata on Grim Lilith, though, that time through, as Immo for steady start racing that 71 Maserati, contemplating how to get by the 115 SJ&H Audi of Grim Lilith. They're very close indeed, as this pack that was 4 or 5 cars strong, they've now sort of separated into pairs of 2, all racing each other. Jackson and Kelly, Lilith and Plata, Boardman and Boss now all sort of amongst themselves. I still don't know what happened to Jackson. He was right behind Ted Edwards, less than a second, lost some of that time, was nearly 2 seconds down. Jackson, though, in the 99, does appear to be catching Ted Edwards a little bit, and he doesn't have a long way to go, admittedly, at 1.2 seconds as he's reeling back in P2.
Could be an interesting fight towards the end. Also, Gunas had a drive-through penalty as well. Kind of just in the last couple of laps, at least, or at least in the last lap, that they've since served that, and that red penalty box has gone away on the left-hand side of the screen. Looking at the chat, Mini Simeon, missed 2/3. Morning, peeps. Good morning, Simeon. And they'll be racing just as hard as if it was 21st and 22nd. Yep, that is so true. I mean, as you said, Jesse, race car drivers are going to race car drive.
Oh, Simeon's 100% correct. Good morning to you. And yes, if you're wondering, this is worth watching back on VOD, on demand. This has been an interesting race. We had a wet qualifying, we had a wet practice, and we had a mixed start that ended up being dry for a while. Alexander Nadula saves it from the wall, but now finds themselves in a disadvantageous position in amongst the top 10 cars. Of course, he's being blue flagged. He's just trying to pick his way through without being too much of a bother here, and he's doing an excellent job of that. Excellent recovery from Nadula, if I do say so myself. But the start of the race, very interesting. The middle part with the rain coming back has also seen some interesting strategy as well, with drivers pitting for wet weather tires when the track wasn't officially wet yet. Very interesting, something you don't really see in ACC. They just refused to deviate from their pre-assigned pit strategy that they had given themselves, and Nadula off the track again. The wet weather wreaking havoc on the number 14 Maserati here.
Yeah, it almost makes you wonder if they've got the correct tyres on that car. It's going off twice in such a short space of time, and if you're not expecting the weather to change, you do have to manually kind of set that up either in the setup menu or through the on-screen display. And they're going wide again and spinning the car across the track.
Was that Boardman?
That was
it.
Almost, no, it was Nadula.
Sorry,
it was,
I got my blue cars confused.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I know what you mean though, because Nadula did almost collect the likes of Boardman and Kevin. Again, just the car just doesn't seem to turn. Runs onto the curb, understeers onto the grass, almost spins across Boss and Boardman, or does spin across them even, almost collecting, but avoiding a bigger incident. So I'm wondering as the rain's coming down heavier, if Nadula's put the wrong tyres on that car, and if they're struggling. I'm not seeing any stickers on the sidewalls, but again, we've also seen that difficult to spot from the TV cams, so I'm not entirely certain what's going on there.
No, you're right. Those are wet weather tires on that car, and I just think maybe the setup isn't flattering them in this particular wet weather setting. But I will say, Boardman and Boss are disagreeing over that position, but there is one thing that both of those drivers can agree upon post-race today, is that they need a new, fresh change of pants, because that was scary for both of the Boardmans going through there saying, please don't hit me in the door, and Boss is saying, please clear the track before I get there, and only just do they both make their way through that very scary incident and preserve that fight for 7th place overall. Daly still enjoys an 11-second lead out in front. No dramas there. Ted Edwards has increased the gap again. That gap was almost back down to 1 second between Edwards and Jackson. It's now back over 2 seconds as Edwards has either found an additional gear in the Race Ventura Audi or Jackson has had another little moment. It's so easy to do either here today. You find something that you hit on and that you're really good in a certain section, or you press a little bit too hard and it all comes a little bit undone. Jackson backing up to Kelly though, and Grim Lilith, which is just in front of this fight with Boardman and Boss. Here is the Kaiju Aldi Customer Racing. What a lovely retro-inspired livery. As an American, we are enjoyers of the Aldi brands. And I do love that car in general. That takes me back to a specific point in motor racing time where bell bottoms and big hair were in fashion.
You say that, but at the same time, Audi's kind of become a bit of an institution over here, at least for us, among us students, looking to live just a little bit cheaper. There's a lot of love for Aldi, especially here, certainly Donington, but in the UK in general. But oh God, do you remember before when we did I think it was with you, Jesse, I was commentating a race here outside of the Donington, one of the British circuits. We're talking about, we started the poll as to whether or not the Greg's sausage roll or steak bake is the superior pastry snack. There was a car off there at there was a car I saw off there at Coppice, I believe it was. I can't seem to see who it was. We've got a replay courtesy of Ash here, and it's Vincunas. And that's contact with Kelly. That's Kelly off into the gravel. Courtesy of Vincunas going slightly wide at Coppice, and that has put Lilith ahead of Kelly. Kelly hasn't dropped off too far, but that will demote them down into P5 overall. So slowly starting to lose the hold on that podium positioning, but still keeping it consistent. That's Norris as well, the 48 Maserati with a drive-through. So it's starting to all kind of come to a head with 9 minutes of this race remaining.
It's about that time in the race, and is that Grim Lilith working on Jackson there in front for that third place position? I'm not quite sure. It wasn't. That was Grim Lilith being heckled by another car entirely, but Norris with the drive-through. It's about that time of the race. We've seen a couple of drive-throughs, one of which earlier on was for actually minor speeding in the pit lane. You can still get a drive-through for speeding in the pit lane as long as you're under a kilometer over the speed limit there or thereabouts. It'll give you a drive-through instead of a stop and go. Anything more egregious than that, it will give you the stop and go. So we've seen drive-throughs for multiple different things. Keep in mind, no live stewarding on Friday. So all this coming via ACC itself, as this is a hornet's nest of activity here late in this race, coming to get 8 minutes left to go at 10 a.m. in sim time. The track very much under medium rain. No medium light rain. This is medium rain. This is medium full stop situation, and it has absolutely brought the chaos for some of these drivers that maybe expected a little bit more light rain here today. The setup will, of course, vary based on what sort of conditions you have. And oh my goodness, just getting the braking, Ron and Dula into the back of the 40-something. I didn't quite catch the number. Was it the 41 of Browers, I wonder?
No, Browers is.
Or is it was Norris,
in that color scheme. It looked like Norris. Yes, it did look like the. It did look like Norris's livery there, and they just served that drive-through as well. So not great for them. Ted Edwards holding on to P2. Jackson falling off. Jackson was a second and a bit away from Edwards last time I looked at the timing sheet. Now 2.3 seconds separate the two. So Edwards kind of doing what they're doing, keeping it consistent and just keeping it where they need to keep it to kind of secure this P2 position. Daly way out in front, 12 seconds separating the two. Lilith chasing down Jackson. Jackson 2.3 seconds behind Edwards. Edwards going slightly wide on the exit of Coppice there, but keeping it on the track, and a 4 stack of Audis for the top 4 cars.
Yep, just reading some of the things from chat. The Fat Stig saying it's light, medium, heavy rain. Les, do not make me time you out. You were supposed to fight against the Sith, not join them. Also, the three-time Night Owl champ has joined us and said, has Ted torpedoed or Ted-pedoed anybody? He's done it to himself. He's actually gone off in his favorite corner, Goddard's, a little bit, but as far as bowling is concerned, he has still not done anything quite that egregious here today. But he has gone off in his favorite corner, bless him, but that has not stopped him. He's been on a bit of a rampage up through the top 5 positions, and he's settled quite nicely into P2 as Jackson is falling away from him and into the grips of Grim Lilith. The final podium spot very much in doubt. And, of course, keeping an eye on the silver category, Kevin Boss has led the entire way. No dramas there to speak of. Peter Varga has regained P2. Remember, that car was down to 3rd earlier on in the race after the initial offing. Critic was P2, but now those positions reverse. Varga in the 508 2nd and Critic in 3rd. And that's how the silver drivers have stacked up for today's race with 5 minutes left to go.
John Daly almost having a bit of a moment there coming on the exit of Coppice. Same thing as Ted Edwards actually, but a little bit more extreme. A little wiggle from the car, but didn't manage to keep it in a straight line. Bodman using all the curb, Kevin Boss using all the curb, and chasing down the likes of Svinkoulis. And Svinkoulis is chasing down, I believe that is Mike Jones in that Audi up front, the 714. Yes, that is Mike Jones. So Bodman caught a bit of traffic here, and traffic is, we've seen traffic dive out of the way completely this race. Svinkoulis almost running into the back of Mike. Bodman trying to find a way around. Both cars will be blue flagged at this point, and Kevin Boss might be licking his lips here to try and facilitate something and make something of this. Svinkoulis pulls the side, lets them through. And that was probably a smart move. Svinkoulis and Mike Jones are fighting for position as well, so that's put a bit of a gap between the two. So it all comes down to now what Mike Jones is going to do to let these cars through, because he can't hog this position, right? Like, as much as he's got the right to be there, he's got a right to kind of hold his line, but he can't defend against Bodman or Kevin. So ultimately, these cars are going to have to find a way through, but if you're Kevin right now, you've got to find a way of capitalising on that and actually kind of creating an advantage whilst Bodman is kind of stunted by having the slower car in front.
Yeah, what I found interesting about that wasn't that Svinkoulis got out of the way. It's that Svinkoulis is the only one of the 2 cars that got out of the way. Mike Jones allowing them to flow. Oh, and it's gone wrong. It's gone incredibly wrong. Contact with Boardman, and again, off of the racetrack. That's going to allow Svinkoulis through, and that has further undone Andy Boardman's race. Contact with the Cave Bear 714. Let's take a look. What'd you see?
So it looks like, Mike just tagged the grass and in the wet. That's a death sentence. You just kind of like lose control of the car, and I think they were trying to give Bodman the space on the outside, but kind of cut across just a little bit too much, and the result of that, just losing the car entirely in the worst position possible and in the worst way possible, if for the likes of themselves and Bodman. Kevin Boss will capitalise from that. I did say they'll be looking for any opportunity, and it's scary for Kevin as well, because when that happens right in front of you, you need to have the time to sort of react to the situation. It's bad enough having one car going ahead of yourself, having 2 out of control. That's hope they brought the brown race suit, because that would be the smart option.
Well, they'd have brought the brown rain and the brown race suit for that one. Mini Simeon has asked, how do the pros like the GT2s opposed to GT3s? Public lobbies seem pretty rare in the GT2 arena. Yeah, that's what happens. The game's known for GT3 racing, and despite that there's other classes on offer, public perception will always be Monza and Spa, won't it really? So that's just the way that GT3 racing goes, no matter what the sim. But you're asking specifically with the drivers here at RCI, I will say there have been some trepidation about the GT2 chassis and racing, but I think any of the drivers that have, a little bit of contact there between Kalmari and Norris, but anybody who's really tried the GT2 in earnest all typically say the same thing on the whole, and it's, you know what, it's really fun. I enjoy being able to stab at the throttle into the corners and out of the corners and not having to overthink how I'm going to micromanage the car. I can just get into it, I can drive like a bat out of hell, and I love doing that. And
for the drive-thru.
we do indeed. And while that's not everybody's opinion, I've heard that many, many times of they enjoy it because it is different but familiar all the same. Looks like Grim Lilith has received a drive-through penalty for track limits, and while that happened, this contact was going on between these two drivers. Austin, late in the race, 1.5 minutes to go. Grim Lilith with a DT.
Yeah, that's going to affect the fight for P3. I think that might have secured it from Jackson, unless Kelly can pull something out, or if Jackson in fact makes a mistake. I mean, Kelly's not that far behind in all actuality. We're about just under 4 seconds behind. So again, Jackson can't really rest up. Has to, there's only 1 or 2 laps remaining of this race. Where is Daly? Because the amount of laps remaining depends on Daly's position. It looks like they will. Was it 197 coming through the S's now? Yes, no, we will see another lap. So, I mean, Jackson has to hold on to it. As long as there's no mistakes made, there's going to be no more fight for the podium. But still, that last lap can
you remember
be very
this guy?
tense. Well, Jordan Daly,
you haven't seen him all race. Remember this dude?
I don't think anyone's seen him all race. That's the problem.
Oh my goodness, Jordan Daly driving the Just Gamers 197. They didn't qualify on pole. They didn't need to. Took the lead early on lap number 1 and has driven away. Robbie Kelly was on pole, but we will have 1 additional lap. You better hope you had your fuel strategy correct. I don't suspect we'll see any issues with that. We have in the past in a dry race here, but I don't suspect you will today because of the relative limited pace because of the rain. But Jordan Daly has just put on a show for everyone. He took the lead early. He's never looked back. He had a 10-second lead. It felt like almost immediately. He has managed the gap, and if I was Jordan Daly, I would just tell him, please stay on the racetrack here for this last lap.
I mean, again, it's only 10 seconds. A spin will cost him more than that, so Ted Edwards in with a shot of winning if that happens. Although at this point in time, it does feel quite unlikely. I know Jordan Daly just managing the car quite well in the conditions, all things considered, but still looks like they're kind of pushing the envelope a little bit more than they need to. I mean, it's just, as we said a couple of times in this stream, race car got a race car. I don't think backing off is really anything that crosses your mind in this situation. Yeah, looking down the field, it looks like everything's sticking as it is, as John Daly rounding the second to last corner to take the win for this round here at Donington Park.
We intro today talking about how up in the air the championship fight was, how nothing was settled, and we figured today it would continue to not be settled. Jordan Daly has made sure of that in the Pro class. He wins it for Just Gamers in the 197 Audi, and what a brilliant race it was, a race that sees him get back in the championship conversation. Ted Edwards comes home a P2, and a brilliant one at that. Aaron Action Jackson gets the final step of the podium. It's an all-Audi lockout in the podium positions for the Pro class. That was hard for me to say. It was too many P's. Kevin Boss wins it in the silver class for Wheelie Slow Racing, and that will be a frustrating end to the race for Grim Lilith and a championship shakeup because of it.
Yeah, no, Lilith was P2 at the championship, right? Or at least as it stands, still is. We'll have to do the points calculations at the end of all of this. But yeah, no, that's a huge hit in terms of points, finishing in P8 overall today. Wojciech Rybecki coming across the line. That's P10 overall. Varga is the other one to watch, P2 in their class. Kevin Boss obviously has won the silver class as well. And yeah, no, that's a huge championship shakeup.
Yeah, it really is, because they came in a little bit more than 10 points apart, but because of Boss's win and, of course, his pole position as well, they would have been. They're going to be less than that now. They're going to be a few points apart. Here are the final standings pending any post-race penalty reports. Daly wins it outright over Ted Edwards and Jackson. Kelly, Blata, Boss wins it in silver and continues his attempt at a championship run here on Fridays. Boardman, Lilith, Huell, Rybecki, Varga P2 in silver, Norris, Kalmari, and Critic your third place driver in silver. Richard Whittle, Martins, Brower, Sven Kunis, Jones, Keith Whittle, Nadula are your finishers. Teixeira and Racer retired from the race today. Mixed conditions, mixed feelings, mixed strategy, and mixing it up out there on the racetrack. Drama to the last with the penalties as well for track limits. Donington never really disappoints.
No, it does not. I mean, it's a fast track. It's a small track, especially when you start crowding it, with like 20 or 20, like 20 to 25 cars or even above that. It gets very interesting very quickly. So, no, Donington, one of my favorite tracks on the calendar personally. It's not just because it's a local track to me. It always yields really good racing. And honestly, it's always exciting. And it's a fun track to drive for the drivers as well, Jesse. So, no, it's a really fun round.
Yeah, it really was. I wonder if Kevin Boss might want to talk to us about his victory here today. And in fact, he does. Kevin Boss, welcome in. Congratulations, first and foremost. But how did you do that? You made that look easy out there today in silver.
I think it's just I feel good driving Donington anyway, and also the mixed weather conditions. I might be a bit better, I don't know, geared towards that compared to some of the other competitors. For me, it was a big surprise that I was able to fight for so long with the top 10 in pro, and especially that fight with Boardman, because I had the pace on him. I just couldn't pass him anywhere properly. I went off twice into red gates because he was braking earlier, and once I just missed my own braking marker, and the other time I hit my normal marker, but I was too close to him, so I had to avoid it as well. But yeah, especially seeing my pace once again in the wets, I can't believe it actually.
It was very impressive. I'm curious, you were racing pros all day. You never really even saw another silver car. Does that weigh heavier on your mind knowing that you're the silver leader, that you have a chance to win this championship? Does that mean that you go into that a little bit more trepidatious than you normally would? Or was it balls to the wall? I'm going for every position I can.
I wasn't really thinking about the championship. Well, yes and no, actually, because I didn't want to do a really stupid move. In the end, like I did fully overshoot into red gate on the inside of Boardman. But other than that, I was still going to race people. I wasn't just going to have a boring race where I wasn't going to fight anyone. But I had to be a bit more careful with how aggressive I went into fights, especially because we saw what I know you guys saw what happened to Boardman when Mike Jones hit the grass, and something like that was just around the corner. So I just had to be careful with things like that. But other than that, yeah, I just went for it.
3 wins on 3 wins on the season. We'll get to Peter Varga in a minute. 3 wins on the season. How's that sound?
Pretty damn good, actually. Now it really hurts me that my Watkins Glen race was such a disaster. I didn't have the pace, then I had the crash, and that low points total because I had to skip the Nordschleife really makes it a very close fight to the last race. So I think Peter will be up for it.
Well, Kevin, do you want to shout out the team? Anybody at home?
Thank you to everyone in the broadcast, because luckily I was able to sit in here and listen to it, because all my usual people that I drive with were in here today, and I always like this distraction that I have when I'm in here.
Well, there you have it. I just want to say that you're a horrible human being, and I found it today. Thank you, Kevin Boss. Congratulations. 3 wins this season, and maybe in the driver's seat for the championship.
Rigged.
Moving on from them to a very upset Peter Varga. Varga second today, but you had to fight for it.
Not upset. I was upset after the last race when the braking marker for pit lane wasn't where it was supposed to be. But for today, after I saw the rain, my target was to not lose points to Kane. Task failed successfully, but I still ended up where I probably would have. I don't know. I think I could have at least been in a position similar to Silverstone if it wasn't for the lap 1 shenanigans. Like a position to maybe get something if something didn't go the good way for Kevin. But after the lap 1, it was just hoping for maybe a miracle and trying to get back to second place.
Well, I got to ask you, it looked like it was chaos where you guys were somewhere vaguely around the top 10 area. You were racing your own class at different points with Critic, of course. You were also racing pro cars that were sprinkled in there as well. What's that like? What's that do to you mentally as you're trying to make up positions? You went back to third. You wanted to get at least a second, and you're also having to race other classes as well. What is that? How do you do that as a silver driver?
I did not take the pro guys as someone who should be my competition. You know, like they are not taking points away from me, but they were the, how would I say it, a roadblock kinda from me being able to get to where I wanted to be towards Critic. But with the silver guys, I kind of got lucky in the unlucky situation that I was, because most of them either made some kind of mistake or just got into some accidents, and I was able to dispatch most of them relatively fast. And then it was just chased on for most of the time towards Critic and maybe the other guys in front. It kind of hurts because, for looking at my speed, I think I could have been in around the top 10 as well, fighting Kevin potentially. So yeah, I
Well,
guess
Peter,
it's a game on for Spa.
that was going to be my final question. It is game on. It's 1 point between the two of you. It's sort of a winner take all sort of affair. How do you like your chances at Spa?
I don't know. With the points for the pole position and fastest lap as well, I'm not sure. I think that's something that's gonna be weighing in quite too much. So we will see. Hopefully, Kevin can give us some nice weather.
Do anybody you
Don't
want to
promise
shout out at
anything.
home or perhaps the team?
Uh, like to think, well, the team behind me, that is me, and my new partners for Team Monkey Racing, gridfinder.com.
Well, there you have it. Peter Varga, P2 today, 1 point behind officially in the championship. We'll show you the standings after the highlights here in a minute. But P2 today, it's going to be a massive fight at Spa. Thanks for talking to us. And from silver to pro, Jordan Daly has joined us, and you didn't see him on stream at all today, rather unfortunately, but you did win the race today, and I'm worrying that Jordan's actually not here now. But maybe we'll talk to Ted Edwards. Oh, no, he is there. Daly, we didn't really see you on stream today. That's because you were so far out in front. You didn't qualify in P1, but that's rarely ever a problem for you, is it?
Yeah, well, I kind of burnt my brakes up a little bit at the start because it were damp, and I ended up getting a little bit of temperature into the tyres. So off the start, I seen him slip, and yeah, I just knew I had some actual grip there. And yeah, well, as you did but didn't see, I just got away during that damp stage quite a lot. I think that's where I got most of the time. And it was just steady away from there. I was just taking it easy. I didn't want to get any warnings, anything like that. Yeah, but it was a good race. I enjoyed it. I did a little bit of practice during the week just to get used to it, but every session was a little different. So yeah, I had to be prepared for a few things. So I had a few different pressures ready, and yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it.
14 points back in the championship now. You've put yourself in a position that if you have another race like you did today at Spa next week, you could walk away the GT2 Friday champion. How's that sound?
Well, we'll see. I noticed that Christoph wasn't here today. He signed out, so being back for the next race, it might be a bit more of a challenge. But I'm looking forward to it, nevertheless. You know,
Do you want to shout out the team or the folks at home?
Racing for myself today. I was just under Just Gamers, but I'll always share Speed Juice and Horseflow and Race Ventura. who also got a podium today. We got second place.
That's right, they sure did.
And the missus, as usual, feeding me along the way, keeping me watered, and yeah, that's it. And to you guys as usual.
Well, thank you very much. I tell you what, it is a team sport, and that team often revolves around family. Jordan Daly drove away from them today, winning in grand fashion here at Donington Park. Congratulations, Jordan Daly, your winner in pro.
Thank you.
Moving on from the winner to P2 in the very same category, Race Ventura, Ted, has been on a bit of a tear recently, and I think we've all noticed.
Hi. That was fun. I enjoyed that. I didn't have any drive practice earlier, so that was interesting. But no, it was fun until the point where I couldn't catch Daly anymore because some reason he had a different car. But it was a good race. It was the weather was mixed. It was different. Poor KTM is all I can say.
Well, it worked out for you. You qualified, I think, 6th or 5th or something like that. And it was just, you made it look academic out there. It would look so easy. You drove through the field and took P2 and fended off Action Jackson there at the end. I mean, it must have felt pretty good for you behind the wheel today.
It was good. It was fun. I qualified 4th. So that was pretty nice. I could have gone quicker, but because it was drying out really quickly, the wet pressures were just going through the roof, so I could not get a good lap. But yeah, it was good. It was difficult getting past Boardman. Even Grim had troubles, as you probably saw on the stream. The little incident that had happened, but yeah, once I got through all that and got into 2nd, then I could get down again. But Daily, but I'll take a P2 at Donington.
You want to shout out the team or the folks at home?
Shout out B Juice Horseflow. That's one that Daly was raised for, and Grim, because they support us very nicely. Race Ventura, obviously, being my team, and Grim's team as well. And obviously, shout out to my girlfriend Katrina for just always being there for every race.
Did she keep you fed and watered?
Always.
That's interesting. I feel like race car drivers are almost like horses in a way like that. But Ted, congratulations on another brilliant race. You're P4 in the championship, and you have a legitimate shot. If you were to win out the final round of Spa and some troubles with other people, you are within striking distance.
Yeah, I'm not great at Spa, so I'm gonna need some practice for next week. We'll have to wait and see.
Well, there you have it, folks. P2 in the pro class. Ted Edwards rocketing to the podium. Congrats.
Thank you.
And do we have Mike Jones to come in and commiserate the race, or Mike Jones with us? Yeah, he sure is. Mike Jones, probably a race you're going to want to forget today. The mixed conditions, not to your liking.
No, it's the same thing at Silverstone. For some reason, I don't know what it is. I question Kevin at some point and see how different of a setup he's running, because it just cannot feel good in the wet. And then I got booted out on lap 1, 15, 18 seconds of damage, and then obviously fighting for my life at the end there and collected the grass with Boardman next to me. That didn't help.
Well, where does your mind go from here? One race left in the season, and hopefully no rain there. Brighter futures ahead for the K-Bear 714?
I mean, if you check the practice server, I'm the only one in here, so if that answers your question.
So you're determined then?
I'm so close to at least being able to pull a podium, which oddly enough, Jesse, how long has RCI existed now? It's been almost 5 years, right?
I've saw cave drawings of the original website, so yeah.
I have never podiumed a championship before, so.
No kidding. I would never have guessed that.
Nope. I think I came P5 in a Night Owl once. I've had one race win and one P5 in the championship, so I just need to stay ahead of Critic. He's I had to do some calculations with the drop around. It should be reasonable as long as I finish the race to beat him. But getting Kevin or Peter obviously be a bit of a stretch unless something happens.
Well, there we have it. Mike Jones, commiserations on today, but we'll see you next week. He's already in the practice server, folks. That's how you know the man is serious. Mike, thanks for coming and talking to us. Well, I've alluded to the championship standings, and we have them for you. We'll show you after race today what they look like heading in to the final round. And folks, they are very close. Let me guess, it's going to start with silver again, because it always does on Friday. Man, it is predictable to a fault. Kevin Boss is in the lead, and this championship has been anything but predictable. Takes the championship lead today by 1 point over Peter Varga, forcing a winner-take-all round at Spa-Francorchamps. It could not be more simple than that. Mike Jones in third place, 190 points. Hat Critic in fourth place, 180, 10 points behind. Bowers has 157. Teixeira on 152. Honda Hagen 150. Kerrigan 132. Fox has 129. Keith Withel on 118 rounds out the top 10. Outside of that, Villas Moss on 94, Sven Kunis on 92, tied with Partez. 86 for Racer, 68 for Nadula. Everyone else has retired from the Silver Championship. That was very close, and it's going to come down to it for all of those drivers. Of course, it's also going to come down to it for the pro drivers. Christoph Verstappen not here today, and that has set up a interesting situation. If Verstappen has a bad race at Spa and Daly does what he did today at Donington Park, Jordan Daly is your likely champion. But also, the same could be said for Grim Lilith, just 1 point behind Daly, 112, 198 to 197. Ted Edwards has a dark horse chance that if he ends up being the benefactor of early race chaos or just has the race of his season, he could end up your champion as well. Gets a little bit harder, but still mathematically possible for Andy Boardman on 187 behind them. Aaron Action Jackson in sixth place on 181. Rafael Huel tied with Wojciech Rybecki with 156 apiece. Miguel Martins in ninth with 147. Robbie Kelly rounds out the top 10 on 136. Outside the top 10, Emma Plato with 125, Tigris on 121, Richard Withel has 116, 1 point in front of Dinak Kalmari, 95 points for Norris, 69 nice for Parker Olson, 58 for Martin Lawrence. Everyone else has retired from the championship. Austin, I can't wait to get to Belgium next week. This is going to be a very exciting finale.
Yeah, no, yeah, it always is, and usually at this stage of the championship, like sometimes it's settled before this point. But given the fact it's still so close, and there's still so much to play for, and it's split between, you know, we said about 4 or 5 different drivers, mathematically, possibly at least. Yeah, it is every reason to tune in.
Yeah, it really is. Basically, all the podium spots, and tell your friends, tell your grandma that this is going to be a race that you're going to want to see. Essentially, every single podium position in all the classes are up for grabs at the decider. Spa-Francorchamps, same time, same place here on race or on RCI TV. You can view the current calendar of events that we got going on and sign up to any of them by visiting racerci.com. On top of that, of course, we have all sorts of events. iRacing continues this coming Thursday at Mugello. We have the Jag versus V12 on Monday. That continues this Monday at Misano. We'll be at Spa, obviously. And, of course, don't forget about the World Tour in swing, the next round Circuit of the Americas in just about 1 week's time. Not this weekend, but the very next weekend. And there's a Wednesday champ that hasn't been officially announced yet, but the signups will be live in a week or so. Stay tuned for more information about that. For more information about that and every other championship, racerci.com. Join the Discord. And of course, a big thank you to our partners that make this race and every race possible. AK Esports, Driver 61, Fanatec, digitalmotorsport.com, and Go Setups. There's a couple of drivers out there that were happy to have a Go Setup here today. I can almost guarantee, and probably some equipment from Fanatec and Digital Motorsports, and maybe even some driver coaching how to race in the rain from driver 61. I've just been corrected that the Wednesday Sprint Championship has been officially announced. It wasn't the other day, which makes sense, but it has been in the interim. It is a Sprint Championship, and it will be on Wednesday. The first race, I think, is on May 15th at Kyalami. Championship still yet to get started. Still time to sign up and make the grid for round one. Austin, can you, in one paragraph, sum up today's race for you?
One paragraph, Mike, one sentence, and that's just chaos. Honestly, there's
Mm.
so much happening all the way throughout the race. The changing conditions, the change in the strategy, the drivers have had to deal with. And again, the stress for a lot of the drivers for, it coming down to a final race. I can guarantee, it's like you got drivers wanting to close off gaps, drivers are wanting to just kind of sort of just finish the job today if it was possible, or at least kind of maximize the chances for next week. So a lot of passion's got in tonight, a lot of kind of winging it as well, a lot of kind of having to play it by ear, but it's all come to a head. And, well, all I can say is I'm looking forward to seeing what next week brings.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Mixed conditions here at Donington led to the inevitable close racing, thrills, spills, and chills out there for all involved has led us to a almost deadlock in all the classes for all the podium positions that will only be settled with one final race from Spa-Francorchamps. On behalf of the entire broadcast team here, I've been Jesse Lee, joined by Austin and Ash Bibby behind the cameras. To all the interviewees, I appreciate them coming in. To all the drivers, we appreciate you sticking around. 20 plus cars this late in the season is pretty darn brilliant, if I do say so myself. So thank you all for watching at home as well. All of your likes, your subscribes, your follows over on Twitch as well. We appreciate that as we steam our way to 4,550 subscribers on YouTube as well. We appreciate all of you. So on behalf of all of us, we thank you for watching. We'll be back live on Monday for the next broadcast. And of course, we'll see you Friday for the thrilling conclusion of the GT2 Champ. And until then, have a good night.